Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 15. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers have trimmed their roster down to 53. They've made 2 trades. It was a very busy day, as it always is, during the cut-down day yesterday. So much to talk about. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Benny Snell Wednesday to you.
Benny Snell football remains, much to the chagrin of most Steeler fans. Benny Snell's still here.
We tried to tell them, but they get upset. They don't want to listen, and they ignore it. But boy, we got a lot to talk about today. We really do. And the initial 53 is set. It's not going to stay that way very long. Probably going to change as early as today. We'll have to see if there are any more moves coming between now and even by the weekend. But an exciting time with the start of the regular season now right around the corner. And I'm kind of liking this. I think we're going to kind of like this little lull here before the regular season starts. Can get some fantasy drafts knocked out and other things like that. But and it's a great day to be alive.
It is. So let's talk about how the Steelers formed their initial 53-man roster. And again, heavy emphasis on the word initial. We already know one roster move that's certain to occur later today. By the time people are listening to this, the Steelers may have very well made some roster changes. So this is a fluid situation, and by no means should we believe this will be the group that goes week 1 to Cincinnati. There'll be waiver claims processed in just a couple of hours. There'll be practice squad additions. There'll be who knows what else will come down the road. And so let's talk about the initial roster here. Do you want to go just position group by position group? How do you want to divvy this up, Dave?
Yeah, just kind of fly through position group by position group here, I guess. And then
okay.
Obviously, I don't know. I mean, however you want to do it. Should we talk about the trades first or however? I don't care.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about the trades first, and then look, we'll fold that into the actual roster. So I don't want to bury it because those were the 2 biggest, most notable headlines of the day. So Omar Khan, his first 2 trades as the Pittsburgh Steelers GM, first acquiring Broncos edge rusher Malik Reid, and then later in the day acquiring Vikings offensive lineman Jesse Davis. For Malik Reid, it was Reid and a 7th-round pick. In exchange, Pittsburgh sending Denver next year's 6th-round pick. And for Jesse Davis, it was basically free, a 2025 conditional 7th-round pick going to Minnesota in exchange for Jesse Davis. So it's hard to give up less for a player than what they gave for Jesse Davis.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't know. Maybe you give 2 bags of footballs instead of 1. I don't know, but that was a bit. Look, anybody in their right mind that follows this team knew that outside linebacker depth and offensive line help were 2 areas where this team really could stand to use some help. And they addressed both of those things. Is it enough? We'll see. I've already watched quite a bit of tape on both the players. I know you have too. At what point of this show do we want to address that? You tell me.
Well, I've watched more Malik Reid than Jesse Davis. I did the report on Reid this morning. It's up in sticky top of the page on Steelers Depot. So let's talk about Jesse Davis first, though, because you're going to provide more insight on him than I will. First of all, I love that he's from Idaho. He's a Vandal. So that's very near and dear.
Roll potatoes.
But that aside, it's a little. Is it fair to say Joe Haig, but maybe worse? And I think you had the apt analogy, and you can explain it better than I can about kind of who Jesse Davis is and what he's, where he can play and where he's better at, et cetera.
I will tell you that the thing that's kind of my best analogy for him is kind of a Joe Haeg situation where Joe Haeg was a tackle that plays some guard. The way I see Davis is as a guard that plays some tackle. Okay. Kind of a journeyman with you. Now, look, this is a guy that has started and played quite a few games in the NFL. Once he finally got, established with the team, I think early in his career, he was on some practice squads there. He has played in the NFL all up and down the offensive line. And as far as regular season snaps go with him in the NFL, over 2,000 at right tackle, over 1,800 at right guard. And as far as left tackle and left guard go, pretty similar numbers, 348 snaps at left tackle, 323 snaps at left guard. All right. So from greatest to least, right tackle he's played the most, least he's played in the NFL is left guard. His best spot might be the place he's played less, and that's left guard there. This is a guy that I'm pining for Joe Haeg to be back if it means that Jesse Davis has to play tackle. I've seen a lot of these gurus saying that he's going to be a tackle with the Steelers. I'm not buying it. I'm buying it as a guard that can play tackle in a pinch, and thus I hope that the team has something coming back on the backside after this calms down to add another tackle back, and preferably maybe not named Trent Scott, if you know what I mean. On top of it, you dang sure don't want him at left tackle, and you really don't want to see him at right tackle, in my opinion. Now, his guard play, I think you'll see this when Josh Carney releases his film room on it. To me, looking at both right guard and left guard snaps with him, he is an instant upgrade over Kendra Green, for whatever that's worth. Not a huge one, but he is an upgrade. I will say this. And people say, "Oh, you guys so negative. You all you do is talk negative." I mean, I have a feeling you're going to have a few negative things to say about Malik Reid, but he might be the best pulling guard the Steelers have on their roster right now. I do like the way he pulls. I like some of his pass sets, the way he anchors. There are some good run snaps with him. They brought him into Minnesota on a deal and hoping that I think that he would win one of those two guard jobs. He obviously didn't. That made him expendable there. Once again, I view him. I think the Steelers look at him, or I would look at him as a guard that you can play in emergency situations at tackle. I don't think anybody should be pining for this guy to log snaps at tackle, regardless of the side there. So I think his best position is left guard, and then right guard, and then right tackle, and then left tackle there. So, and I do think he is an immediate upgrade over Kendra Green as a backup.
Right. And again, the issue with Green being the presumed backup, we assume, though it's not been announced, that Kevin Dotson will be this team's week 1 starter at left guard. Is Kendra Green really offers you nothing besides backup left guard, because he's the number 3 center behind J.C. Hassenauer, and he's never played right guard. So you're in a weird area with a lack of versatility when it comes to Kendra Green, assuming he's the backup, and Jesse Davis is a guy that can certainly play similar to Joe Haeg, as you mentioned, basically anything but center. Now, he was working primarily guard in Minnesota this summer and lost out to the rookie Ed Ingram. And so that was the incentive for the Vikings to try to deal him. But the question is, to hear you tell it, is he's a much better guard, really can't play a lot of left tackle, can't play it well. Right tackle's even, not ideal for him at this stage in his career. who's this team who is their backup tackle right now behind Dan Moore and Chukwuma Okorafor? You release Trent Scott, you release Joe Haig. Trent Scott may circle back. That seems logical, but is that ideal? I would argue definitely not.
It's not ideal either of those two come back in Haig or Scott, and it's not ideal if it's Jesse Davis. Plain and simple.
Haig is the best of the three in terms of tackle play. I
found myself late last night wondering if I could get me a Joe Haig fathead. I miss him that much, and for me to get to that place tells you a lot, right?
Right. Because something else has to be occurring then. Something has
you would think, yeah, and hopefully that's not Trent Scott coming back to the Pat Meyer fan club, Pat Meyer Army. 29 snaps during the preseason for Jesse Davis. Alex, 29. 21 of them at left guard, 8 at right guard. The Steelers obviously scout, other teams during the preseason. It's hard to imagine them looking back at last year's tape, which was predominantly, I believe, at right tackle for Miami, and saying, there's a guy that we could use right there, and mainly going off of that tape as opposed. In other words, I'm guessing they looked at these 29 snaps at Minnesota and said, okay, we could probably use that guy at guard. At least that's what I think. And then they probably look back and say, well, he's got the position versatility as well too. Nobody should be. I'd much rather see him play snaps for the Steelers at guard than I would at tackle, and not even close.
Right, I get that, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but your backup linemen right now consist of Kendra Green, J.C. Hassenauer, and Jesse Davis. If all those three guys are going to be considered primary interior guys, then who the heck are your backup tackles? And again, that probably means something else is coming. Trent Scott could be returning. You'd have to think they're going to look at some sort of outside help, at least evaluate those options as well, whether that's, I don't know. I know Alex Leatherwood's going to be kicked around quite a bit, but he was even playing a lot of guard. He was kind of getting kicked inside by the Raiders. So your whole backup lineman just can't be a bunch of interior swing guys.
You're right. I tell you what, though, if you can find another tackle to come in here, and even maybe two, maybe a young one off waivers or something like that, to make room for him, I'd let Kendra Green go at this point. Be honest with you, I think Jesse Davis would be an upgrade over him as a backup guard. And to me, that negates Kendra Green. Just take the L and move on, when it comes down. But I have no clue what they're going to do. We're going to shed some light today because this team has 8 offensive linemen on their 53 at this point. To take advantage of the game day roster rules, to have the extra, to be able to dress 48. You have to have 8 offensive linemen dressed a week, right? In a game, they only have 8 on the roster. That alone tells you that they're going to have at least one more offensive lineman, I think, on their roster, unless they 100% they're going to get to Sunday and think, well, those 8 are going to be the 8. You know what I'm saying? So I fully expect another offensive lineman to arrive. I just don't. Odds tell you that it's probably going to be Trent Scott, but here's the hoping. I've never wanted to be more wrong in my life than that.
With Davis in particular, less about where he's playing, but what he can do. Where do you see his strengths in terms of run blocking versus pass pro? Where does he look best? Where does he look worst?
He looks worse on the edge and having to handle speed. He just, and he can't handle some of those chop, rip type stuff on the outside. I think he opens the gate a little bit way too quick there. I think he concentrates too much on worrying about getting beat back inside when it comes to the edge. Let me focus on the positives here. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Focus on the positives. I like him on the move as a guard. I think he instantly becomes, if you use him at guard, I think he becomes your best pulling guard, to be quite honest with you. I like the active hands, especially at guard with him. And there's some good anchoring stuff with him. Him being able to drop anchor and then that bunny hop back and be able to hold ground that way. Now, not the most agile out in space, but the other thing that sticks out is that I think he's real cognizant of how to handle twist and stunts to the inside and properly pass them off. Okay. I do think that's a plus with him, especially at the guard position. I think he recognizes that stuff coming on twist and stunts, and I think he does a good job of passing that off. That's a strength of his. I like him in the limited tape that I've seen, being able to pull and keeping close. In other words, shortest point between two distances and getting there in a hurry and making either kind of that that log block or just continuing to push outside there. And then I do like some of his active hands and anchoring, being able to drop anchor as a pass protector. Those are the positives.
The pulling's nice, but Pittsburgh's not doing that a whole lot, are they? A couple times I've seen it.
Maybe they should.
Maybe they should, but it doesn't seem to be the bulk of the Steelers' run game. A lot more inside zone, split flow type stuff than gap scheme. So guard, you think overall is the best place for Davis to play?
I do.
Okay.
Left guard specifically, the place that he's played the least amount of snaps.
Wow, that's why. But you said it was the most he's played this summer, correct? In Minnesota,
right? He played 29 snaps in the preseason, 21 at left guard, and 8 at right guard.
I still can't get over just the trade compensation. I can't remember a draft pick this far out that was conditional 7th round pick. So the old adage is you get what you pay for. And obviously, he wasn't going to make the Vikings. They were just trying to ship him out for anything. And according to Jeremy Fowler, the Steelers were pretty active and involved in the offensive line trade market, which was pretty active this summer. There were several offensive linemen traded. I think Fowler reported Dennis Staley they were interested in acquiring as well. That obviously did not happen. And so they fall back on Jesse Davis for, again, a conditional pick in 2025.
Once again, to sum it up, if they gave, once again, what's less than what they gave up? 2 bags of footballs? I don't know. I mean, it's pretty close in and we don't even know what a conditional is. Does he have to play like 500 snaps when it comes to that? Now, the price tag overall, as far as what you're paying him, isn't all that much either. Let me find the contract here real quick here. It is should carry a cap charge of $1.45 million. I'm assuming that the Vikings had to pay that $50,000 workout bonus that's in there, because obviously that was during the offseason there. So if they had to eat that $50,000 paid to him as a workout bonus, then his cap charge is $1.45 million, and I think he has as part of that $200,000 in per game roster bonuses, which I think means if he's active for a game, it's probably active game roster bonuses. You would take that $200,000 and divide it by 17, and then that's what he gets per game. So every game that obviously that he isn't on the, or every game that he's inactive for, you would subtract, whatever the per game price is. But it's $200,000. I think he dressed in all 17 games last year for the Vikings. So the not likely to be earned is really likely to be. It's basically considered likely to be earned.
Mm-hmm. But again, the overall contract is really cheap, so that's not much of an issue. I mean, to the overall point, we knew that Pittsburgh had to make changes and additions and subtractions to their offensive line. That group just overall was underwhelming. You just couldn't roll into the season with the group you had this summer and expect significantly better results. Now, Davis himself is not going to, change the whole tide of this offensive line, and he's got his own liabilities and problems and, limited ceilings and things like that. But certainly you knew, as you mentioned, top of the show, the two areas this team needed to address the most was broadly the offensive line and adding edge depth, and they did both, and we expect more changes along the O-line before the week is done.
Here's the thing. If you got into play, if you consider him mostly a tackle, then why the hell did you let go of Joe Haeg? Unless you just say, I would have much rather have seen Haeg in a game at tackle than I would Davis from what I've seen on the film so far. Now, if you got him to mainly be a backup guard who break glass in case of emergency situation, has to play some tackle. Okay, I get it. But
then who was the tackle then?
I once again, we're back to who's on first.
Right. Then we're probably back to Trent Scott.
Right.
Or a veteran that gets brought in today. And there are some veteran options. I just tweeted a list, and I have no order of who I would prefer, but just veteran tackle options, because I think Pittsburgh would want a guy with some experience. Roderick Johnson, LaRaven Clark, Rashad Hill, Michael Schofield, Justin School. Schofield makes the most amount of sense to me. He's been on my radar for a little while. He worked with Pat Meyer with the Chargers, but he's a little Jesse Davis-like, where he's not really a true tackle. He's kind of played up and down the line, more of a right side of the line player, right guard, right tackle. I don't know if he could offer much at left tackle, and so maybe that's a little less attractive, but you have to think they're going to add a veteran option, whether that is just Trent Scott coming back. Although if Trent Scott comes back, then who goes? I don't know how that roster move would play out.
Yeah, unless they're just holding on, and here we're getting in. Why don't you talk about Reed, and then we'll get into, because we're back into talking about the roster a little bit here. Structure. Who knows? Maybe they held over one guy. I don't know, Steven Sims or something like that. That maybe they're going to try to sneak through waivers or whatever. But they better find another backup tackle. Mm-hmm. I think we both agree on that. Not named Trent Scott, not named Joe Haeg.
Right. All right, let's talk about Malik Reid. That was the first trade of the day coming over from Denver. Again, Pittsburgh getting Reid in a 7th-round pick for a 2023 6th-round pick. So the compensation not too terribly expensive there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Reid with 5 sacks last year, 8 in 2020. I think he has 14, 15 career sacks overall for the Broncos, former undrafted free agent out of Nevada. The way that I view it,
go Wolfpack.
I know. You probably watching him back in the day. Also, I'm sorry, Carson Strong got released yesterday, so I'm sorry to hear that with Philadelphia. I'm sure I'll go back to the practice squad. Malik Reid, a more veteran option. We knew this team needed to add some edge depth after releasing Jannard Avery. And so what Reid offers is a versatile guy that's a good scheme fit. He plays on his feet. He can, be displaced. He can drop into coverage. I think overall, the way that I view him is, he's not a big guy overall. He's like 6'1", 230, 31 and a half-ish inch arms, but he plays bigger than his size. I think he's got some functional strength. I think he sets the edge well against the run. He's a good effort player. He's a pretty ball-aware player in terms of forcing fumbles and finishing the play and things like that. As a pass rusher, he relies mostly on speed to power, bull rushes, long arms. He's decent at that. But other than that, he doesn't have a lot of other counters or great go-to moves. And I think it's kind of an overall, I was a bit underwhelmed. I think the production doesn't necessarily reflect great tape as a pass rusher.
The thing that jumped out on me, and I didn't look at his run stuff, and I looked at him mostly as a pass rusher in the quick time after, on yesterday, when we downloaded the tape and all like that, but I looked at him more as a pass rusher. And then I read your report this morning. Not bad at all against the run. I mean, I think he's aware. I think he has good awareness when it comes to that. I think he's good at kind of anchoring and knowing how to set the edge, turn people back inside, discipline in that area. I think he does a reasonably well job of getting off blocks against a run. And look, if you're going to play outside linebacker in this defense, you better be good against a run. And I think he can hold up his end of the bargain there. Based on what I've seen in your breakdown there. Now, as a pass rusher, I'm with you. I went into it expecting a little bit more as a pass rusher. I think he's a better pass rusher top to bottom than Avery was, but I don't think I think he wins differently. I don't think he's going to win. Avery when Avery wins, he wins usually with that speed around the edge. That's not Malik Reid. He's not that ankle flexion and it's just that's not his game to kind of bull and rip you and bend the edge. The way that kind of TJ Watt does. He tries to basically win with power or with that maybe that first. He's got kind of a ghost move in there. He tries to get you to maybe overset and then maybe beat you back inside that way. He does. One thing that stuck out is he does seem to get swallowed sometimes by some of these larger tackles that know how to use their hands. That jumped out in the 3 games that I watched of him on tape. I will say this. I think he is an upgrade over Derek Tuska, Hamilcar Rashid, who they waived, and Jannard Avery. So I think he's an upgrade over those players, but just barely.
Right. It was less of an upgrade than I thought it would be. I think Reed is more of a controlled, structured player. I think Avery was more explosive, to be honest, but I think he played just too out of control for what Pittsburgh was looking for in terms of run defense, in terms of too many two-way goes and losing the edge and things like that. I don't think that'll be as much of an issue for Malik Reid. I think he maximizes his length, although the length is not that great, but he's able to stay clean and create space in the run game. He does really well against tight ends in terms of getting off of blocks, holding the point of attack. Tackles, of course, can give him some more trouble overall. You're right. He can get sort of engulfed and swallowed up. I mean, he does use, his main rush is his bull rush. He will try to occasionally rip and bend through the edge off of that. Other than that, I didn't see a lot of other rush moves. I charted the Steelers game last year in which he had a forced fumble on Ben. Again, this guy is really ball aware. He's got 3 forced fumbles. They all came on sacks over the last 2 years. But against Pittsburgh last year, he had 21 rush opportunities. 9 times used a bull rush or a long arm. 5 times there was a stunt. 3 times contained. There was 1 dip, 1 cross chop, and then 2 that were RPOs that really there was no rush there. And so I think he's going to be familiar with Pittsburgh's system, what they're going to ask of him in terms of the games, in terms of playing on his feet, in terms of walking out against twin sets, 2 receiver sets, and things like that. So I think it'll be a good scheme fit for him. I think his run defense will be solid. I think he'll be more of a no-nonsense pass rusher. Is the upside incredibly high? No. His sack reel last year had 5 sacks. They were relatively low quality. I only had 1 that I counted as a high quality sack of the 5. But I think he'll play within structure, with his experience, and it is, to me, a bit of an upgrade over Derek Tuska.
I would agree. And if he goes up the arc and he doesn't win the edge, he's not good about retracing all the time,
and he's not as bendy as I thought, because he had like a 6'8", 9'3" cone coming out, and I don't really see that translated to the tape.
Boy, what's up with him liking these under 6'2" outside linebackers all of a sudden?
Right, with Avery. Yeah, and Avery was bigger. He was a bulkier guy. I mean, typically my concern is that smaller edge guys, unless you're James Harrison, but he was not small, he was just short, have not worked as well in Pittsburgh as the bigger guys.
I mean, 6'1" and 2/8 on him, on Reed. He looked small on tape, Well, what was Avery?
His height, he was about 6 foot something. He was a squattier guy. He was heavier. I don't know exactly what his weight is now. I don't know what Reed's exact weight. He was 234 coming out, but that was years ago. So.
Yeah, he's had to bulk up a little bit from that. I think he looks
it's a more slender body type than Jannard Avery.
Jannard Avery was coming out at 6'004. So Reed towers over him. At 6'1" and 2/8. But look, we've been clamoring for them to add depth there, right? And here's the long and short on him once again. It's the best number 3 they've had in there this summer, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Avery, played well and had some really good moments. I just wondered if he wasn't a great scheme fit overall, because as you mentioned, to be an outside linebacker in the system, you better play the run, especially in a year where you were 32nd in run defense, had your worst run defense in team history. And so that's probably the nuts and bolts, the back to basics Pittsburgh wants to be at, in terms of they need guys who can play within structure, can play the run, will contain the quarterback, all the mobile quarterbacks they're going to face this season. And I think Reed's going to offer that more than maybe what Avery was able to do.
Reed also has experience on both sides, as well. And I think as you listed in your breakdown, you can walk him out on occasion if you need to help. Not that the Steelers drop their outside linebackers like they used to, but he does have some experience doing that.
Like I mentioned, in terms of the positive, one of the best things I saw about him as a pass rusher are the forced fumbles. I mean, he had the one on Ben last year, and that's probably something that certainly got Pittsburgh's attention. He had another forced fumble against Washington. I think that was earlier in the season, had a strip sack on Justin Herbert in 2020. So I think he does finish the play well. He's a really high effort guy, high motor, good pursuit, good chase. That's generally how he's gotten a lot of his sacks over his time in Denver. Whenever I saw 13 sacks the last 2 years, I got really excited about that. You turn on the tape, you watch the quality of those sacks. It doesn't quite match how gaudy those numbers may look initially.
Okay, I agree.
So I just kind of wondered, I mean, certainly I'm not opposed to this team adding more veteran edge help. I think that's what they wanted, a more veteran guy to be the number 3, push Tuska as the number 4. But did they have to trade for this guy? Could they have found someone similar on the waiver wire? I haven't gone through the list of other waiver wire options, and there's still uncertainty there if you claim a guy. But if it was like, did you have to trade for Malik Reed? Maybe he would have been cut. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like some people that cover the Broncos, kind of disappointed to see him go. And I know their general manager Patton had a lot of nice things to say about Reed during his presser yesterday overall, saying they had a log jam there, and one too many. Now look, the Steelers didn't give up hardly anything for him, right? I mean,
right.
Did you go over the compensation?
I did, yeah. It's
okay.
Reed and a 7th for next year's 6th from Pittsburgh.
Okay. And as far as salary goes with him, it is $2.433 million because he had signed a restricted tender. So he is the outside linebacker version of Robert Spillane, if you will.
Right. It should mention that both Reed and Davis will be free agents after this season.
Right.
So, I mean, do I hate the Reed trade? No, I don't. There's value in it. I came away, though, just a little more underwhelmed than I thought I would be whenever I first saw his resume, his production, etc.
Once again, if they use Davis as a guard, and we know how they're going to use Reed, they slightly improve their roster.
Right. Which is something. It's a step, but
it's like sitting on a phone book.
I barely know what a phone book is, let alone what that reference is.
In other words, or standing on a phone book. That's how much improvement they made there.
Well, back in your day, the phone books were huge. Today, they're real skinny.
Yeah, it depends on where you lived. I mean, I'm not talking in an Atlanta Metro phone book. I'm talking probably a Pensacola phone book.
Okay, I remember back in the day, the phone books my mom had, they were massive, but I know they've changed and no one uses a phone book. So that's
you grew up right there in Greater Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. That's just what I remember. Okay. Anyway, but I get your point. Certainly not massive improvements, but obviously the trade capital was not massive. I mean, Davis, it was as minimal can be. And with Reed, they didn't give up a lot. It was, a 6th and a 7th for Malik Reid. So, I mean, I'm not too mad about that.
Now, if they use Davis as a tackle, I want my phone book back. It's a wash.
Yeah. All right, Dave. So those were the 2 trades. We'll see if any other. Again, there should be some more roster additions. So very much want to caution. This is not the finalized roster. And again, with waiver claims and other moves happening today, the Steelers roster is probably already changed by the time someone's listening to this. But let's go through the initial 53-man roster as it was set at 4 p.m. yesterday. We'll start with the quarterbacks, still 3 on the roster, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph. So that's the 3. Mike Tomlin's still not committing to a starter. We can certainly take a good and valid guess at it being Mitch Trubisky, but for now, those are the 3.
Yeah, no surprise there. I still think I'm gonna stay. I'm dying on this hill out here, Alex.
You are.
The flag's buried pretty damn deep at this point. I think they trade Mason by the time, obviously by the time the trade deadline goes away, and we still got 10, 11 days until the regular season starts. And Dallas Cowboys seem to think that they can go into the season with 1 quarterback right now. So I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Yeah,
we'll see. I'm still thinking Rudolph's going to stay. I think if it would have happened, it would have happened yesterday. All season, yes.
Okay.
But we will see. But for now, those are the 3 quarterbacks. And again, we assume Trubisky will be the starter, but Mike Tomlin making no announcement yet. At running back 3, and Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, and Benny Snell. So Warren, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Oklahoma State, one of the camp darlings, a strong summer overall. He said he would cry happy tears if he made the roster, and he probably shed a couple yesterday, and deservingly so. Anthony McFarland, the former 4th-round pick, was released.
And that means, Benny Snell football stays. And we realize that upsets a lot of you, but as I've said all along, as Alex has said, I think we go, this is like three years in a row we've tried to tell people this. Mike Tomlin loves Benny Snell football. He knows what he's getting out of Benny Snell football. Special teams, like people say, why do you guys spend so much time talking about special teams? If there's one complaint that I hear on Twitter or email that we get, Alex, is you guys give too much credit to special teams. Well, we do that because the Steelers really value special teams ability. And I got a chuckle looking at all the 53-man rosters out there that had Anthony McFarland making it over Benny Snell. And here we are.
A lot of trust in Snell. Again, he's ideally the number 3. Hopefully Warren can be more than number 2. I imagine they'll kind of share some time, what little time there is behind Najee Harris offensively to begin the year, and see how Warren looks and proceed from there. But, Snell, what he's going to offer in pass pro, on special teams, just overall trust. And listen, it's no secret. Pittsburgh likes big running backs, more powerful running backs. And they got 3 of them when Harris, Warren, and Benny Snell. Now Warren's not tall, but he's not small either. McFarland, just fell out of favor. And it was pretty obvious by the back half of camp and a couple of preseason games that he had fallen as a number 4 running back and was not going to make this team. They tried to expand his special teams value. That did not work. Warren, to his credit, did expand his value and what he could do and what he could offer. And he just simply outplayed McFarland.
Okay.
Derek Watt, the fullback. I just had some question because of the injury, what's going to happen with him, but his spot's pretty safe.
Yeah, look, and you just hope that he's over that shoulder, and maybe they'll use a fullback a little bit more than they have since he's arrived, and hopefully he can continue to giving you what he's been giving you on special teams.
At tight end, keeping 3, and that was as predictable of a position as there was going to be on this roster in Pat Frymuth, Zach Gentry, and Connor Hayward, Kevin Rader, Jay Sternberger being released. Hayward making the team as a rookie and had a nice camp, had a nice summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, receiver.
With Hayward, it was interesting to hear Canada talk yesterday about, they don't want to give him too much right now. And, you're primarily going to see him as an F, in different type situations. I dare say that if he hit 10 offensive snaps in a game, that would be pretty impressive, at least right out of the chute with him. I think the goal is to add more and more to his plate, maybe some fullback later on in the season, occasionally maybe lining up in the backfield, maybe that way. But I mean, this guy is going to be a detached, either H-back or tight end primarily when he is on the field. He should give you a little something on special teams.
Right. I think he carved out a good role on special teams, can be a multi-phase guy there. I think he would work well as a fullback. He got some chances to work there this summer because of the Derek Watt injury, but again, so far has generally been used as a tight end.
Okay.
All right, receivers where things got interesting, keeping 7. So Mike Tomlin talked about all the tough decisions they had to make at receiver, ended up not really having to make any tough decisions, at least so far, by keeping all 7 of the top 7 guys in Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Gunnar Olszewski, Calvin Austin, Miles Boykin, and Steven Sims. So the odds of them keeping 7 going into week 1 feel pretty low, but they're going to start with 7 and go from there.
Yeah, I think the big question is what happens later on today. Does Calvin Austin III need to go to IR? That's to me, that's the only real question there. Sims I missed 3 on my 53-man roster. Obviously the 2 new guys and Sims. I had him off the roster. And those are the 3. So I think the big question now is what happens between now and week 1. Does Sims, are they trying to do something with him, maybe to sneak him through waivers or something like that? Or do they legitimately need him because of Calvin Austin III? Because, let's face it, they're likely only going to dress, 5 during the game?
That would be logical.
Maybe 6. You better have a clear purpose if you are going to dress 6, but you would think 5. And if they got 7 on the roster, then 2 of those guys are going to have to be down a week. And Calvin Austin is just almost everything. If Calvin Austin III stays on, does not go to IR, he is going to be inactive week 1.
Mm-hmm.
We agree?
Yes, because he just missed so much time.
Right. And who's the second one?
In that scenario, it'd probably be Sims or Boykin, because as we talked about last night, Boykin's going to be a starting gunner. We believe week 1. Right.
So, you kept a veteran in Sims to be inactive. Okay.
I think the idea was keep our best guys and go from there. Now with Austin,
and Sims had a great preseason, and right. I never denied that. I deny the roster construction aspect of it. Look, we know one player's coming to the 53 this week. If there's 2, who's the next guy off the roster?
A receiver would make sense. Now, again, is that an Austin move? Is that something with Sims? Now, your eagle eye yesterday, there were photos on the team site that showed Calvin Austin wearing a helmet. We don't know his level of participation. There's been no announcement on that, but you wouldn't think a guy that had a helmet on during yesterday's practice would go to IR today.
Unless he's out there just taking mental rest. It's so hard it's so hard to judge, but I've learned from you to look closely at photos over the years. So
right. And for whatever it's worth, at camp, Austin did not wear a helmet during practice. He was just standing on the side.
Well, there you go.
So that's some sort of sign. Now, does that mean anything or everything? No. Again, we weren't there to watch practice. I don't know. He could have just stood there the entire time. I don't know. But
what does it mean? What does it mean?
We'll find out today, I guess. At least we know one player going IR, so we'll see if Austin joins him. But going heavy there, and again, my thought was when I made my initial roster was it has to look weird. It always looks weird at the beginning, and then by week 1, it starts to look a bit more normal in terms of roster construction. But it gets weird at the beginning. There's always one spot that's super heavy, and that spot this year was receiver.
If Sims is waived, I get half credit, right?
No, we were over this last. I don't lose half credit.
Yes.
My roster prediction was at 4 p.m. yesterday, and I had the gumption to call 7 receivers. I got a lot of crap for saying they're going to keep 7 initially. Now, again, will they keep 7 to start the year? I'd be pretty surprised. So we'll see what happens.
You missed 2 and I missed 3. That's pretty damn impressive.
So.
But to me, it was obvious outside of maybe that one wide receiver spot. And look, if I would have known Miles Killebrew, or at least appears to be healthier than maybe what I thought he was, then I wouldn't have had Riley. I wouldn't have kept Elijah Riley, and I probably would have kept Sims at that point.
Right.
So, but regardless, I think we had a pretty good read on it here.
I think so too. Offensive line.
I still want half credit if Sims gets waived.
No half credit. 8 offensive linemen total, and Dan Moore, Chuck Wilmore, core 4. I put Jesse Davis with the tackles just so that list looked a little more not so empty, but as we've talked about, really more of a guard. Interior offensive linemen, Cole, Daniels, Dotson, Green, and Hassenauer. Again, Joe Haig I think Joe Haig was the most surprising cut yesterday. Trent Scott joining him, as well John LeGlue also being released. So guys that we thought were on that bubble would make this team cut. Will any of them circle back? A guy like Scott would make the most amount of sense, but for now to start, they're keeping 8.
Right.
Kendra Green, as you said, the question is, I was pretty confident Green would make the initial roster. The question is, does he get the heave-ho based on any sort of waiver claims or further acquisitions? That's what I'm watching today.
Right, and especially look if they think Davis is a guard, right?
Right. I mean, again, what is Green's value to this team right now? He's not going to be the starting left guard. We agree on that, right?
Right.
So he's a backup left guard. He's a third string center. He's never played right guard before. How can you dress this guy on a game day and expect him to contribute? I mean, I don't see that. And you don't want to do the thing where, let's say, James Daniels gets hurt and now Kevin Dotson has to shift to right guard and then Green goes to left guard. Too many moving
parts.
You don't want to make more moves than you have to. 1-to-1 replacements. And so I don't know how you dress this guy. If you keep him, it's just because you drafted him. And heck, I mean, Omar Khan and Andy Weidel did not technically draft this guy. But it would be just because of the investment.
You don't want to take the visible L.
Right. But I think the best thing you can do is admit your mistake. Look what the Raiders are doing. I mean, they gutted the whole old regimes, all their draft picks. So the quicker you move on from your mistake, the worst thing you can do when you make a mistake is sit on it and make it worse.
Keep trying to jam that square peg in the round hole, and we agree that's not going to work, right? Period. End of story. You've seen enough?
I've seen enough.
I've seen enough as well, too.
All right, that's the offense. 25 total on offense, 25 on defense. So currently an even split. The defensive line keeping 7, which is heavy but expected, with Hayward, Ogunjobi, Leal, Wormley, Loudermilk, Alualu, and Montravius Adams. Adams reportedly back at practice yesterday, so no consideration for IR there. Again, they probably will only dress 5 on game day. My guess in terms of the guys who will be down are going to be Loudermilk and Leal.
Possibly, yeah. We don't know the health. Did Loudermilk aggravate something in those 5 snaps that he played in the game against the Jaguars? I don't know. There was no picture of him. I don't think I saw him in any of the pictures from practice yesterday. There, maybe he's a candidate to go to IR. I don't know, but it does sound like Adams is going to be healthy enough to stay on the 53, at least for now. So we'll have to see.
And my sense was Loudermilk will avoid IR. I don't want to say that concretely because I don't know exactly what's happening, but he pulled that muscle the next to last day of camp. I think he's just been trying to work through that. Again, he could just be an inactive to start the year as opposed to going to IR.
Yeah. When Austin kind of spoke about him yesterday, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think he's as healthy as he needs to be right now when it comes to Loudermilk. Obviously, it's kind of hard to read it, parse some of these things these coaches say nowadays. But maybe if there's a kind of fringe guy that winds up going to IR today, maybe it's him.
Okay, fair enough. We will see. At the outside linebackers, keeping 3 internal guys, and the acquisition of Malik Reid. So TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Derek Tuska, and now Malik Reid as the presumed number 3 behind Watt and Highsmith. Highsmith telling reporters he also returned to practice after missing quite a bit of time with a rib injury.
Now we wait and see how long it takes Reid to get on that moving train,
I think he'll be good by week 1. I think the system's going to be pretty familiar to him, and I think he should be the guy week 1 against the Bengals. All right, at inside linebacker, keeping 4 in Miles Jack, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, and Mark Robinson. Marcus Allen released, although that may be just a temporary move we can talk about here in a moment. Buddy Johnson, also last year's 4th-round pick, he was released. That's one of the more notable players cut, but to me, no surprise. His camp was pretty uninspiring. He's a good tackler, and that's about it. Not a great athlete, doesn't attack, doesn't get off blocks well, was not all that valuable on special teams. So 7th round pick this year. Mark Robinson had a really good camp, certainly outplayed Buddy Johnson and makes the team.
That old boy in that 90 and 30 series that got upset with my very objective comments about Buddy Johnson. We'll never hear from him again, will we?
I don't think so.
He'll become Egg John 436 bunch of numbers on Twitter at this point now.
Right. He'll be in your mentions probably.
Look, here's the thing about Buddy Johnson, and it's what I said in that 90 to 30 series article there. We didn't learn much about him last year during the preseason. We certainly didn't learn much about Buddy Johnson during the regular season. We had a lot of time to try to learn more about Buddy Johnson this year in camp and this year in the preseason, and he disappointed, to lack of a better word for it, and that's why now he's off the roster, and we'll have to see if they even value him enough to put him on a practice squad. I would imagine they would, but stranger things have happened to him. There's nothing dynamic about him, really, from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, there was no standout trait to his game. It was a disappointing summer. You would thought that'd be a guy that would take a second-year leap, and that just simply did not happen.
Man, who the hell's missing on some of these mid-round picks, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly common. I think it happens to a lot of teams, organizations. It obviously was a miss and a bad pick, but you get Robinson in there, and that'll make you feel better about missing on Buddy Johnson.
And look, he was Robinson more than deserves a spot. And Austin just, in a word right now, Robinson just needs more experience, needs to experience more, needs to learn more about the defense and all like that. There's nothing wrong with his Sikkim, his style play. It's just all about more experience for Robinson at this point. I still stand by the fact that I think this kid's going to see some meaningful snaps at some point during his rookie season. It might be back half and all, but I think there's enough there that I can take some of his snafus, if you will, for some of the plays that he makes. I think you pointed out one on the all 22. Instead of going under or over, instead of going under or over, meaning on top of around a block, why not just go over a block?
Right. That was in that slant flat where the receiver, tries to set a quote unquote pick and to kind of, force the linebacker to struggle to get around that. And Robinson just puts his face through him, and the Lions were called for OPI on the play, which is hilarious.
Right.
So
come to find out, there's 3 ways to go to do that, not just 2.
For sure. I think Robinson could play later this year, but what I said was similar to what Terrell Austin said yesterday, is, and this guy needs some time. I think everyone wants Robinson to play week 1 against the Bengals, start him, get rid of Devin Bush. And I understand the instinct to that, but there's still a ways to go. Robinson still so new to the position, obviously a rookie. There's a lot he probably does not know yet. And so, again, Spillane is next man up if Devin Bush falters, not Mark Robinson.
Sure, but at some point here, the plugs are going to have to be pulled on Bush and or Spillane.
Sure. I just think it'll be, as you're saying, later. Just patience is what I'm asking for with Mark Robinson. I think he will play at some point, maybe this year, but it's not going to be out of the gate.
I mean, we can agree. I mean, although the loss of Casey for a while hurts, that second inside linebacker position, the way it stands right now, is the weakest link on that defense.
Yeah, on the defense specifically, yes.
Right.
Yes. All right, let's go corner, and pretty expected group of 5 kept in Witherspoon, Sutton, Wallace, Pierre, and Millette. Justin Lane released. I saw some people still have Lane on the rosters, which just says you weren't paying attention based on where he was running. I've been saying that since mid-camp, where he was falling behind, losing snaps, running behind a rookie and Chris Steele, running behind Lyndon Stevens. Really bad signs there. And so, Lane had value on special teams, but that does only run so far. James Pierre should be a starting gunner on this team. He had a better camp. He's a better cover corner, more upside, more potential, and he beats out Justin Lane.
Right. I mean, nobody should be surprised based on really your reporting alone there.
Right. Now with Millett, the question is, how's that hamstring? I don't think he'd be an IR guy, but that's one often forgotten injury to watch, and hamstring injuries can take a lot longer to recover from fully than people think. So I'm watching Millett's status going forward.
Right.
And at safety, keeping 5 initially with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Norwood, Damontae Kazee, and Miles Killebrew, Elijah Riley being released. So here's where things get a little interesting. We know that Kazee has now made the initial 53. He's going to go to injured reserve later today. He has to initially make the 53 in order to have a chance to return. So Pittsburgh thinks the injury is obviously serious, but not season-ending necessarily. And so Kazee to IR, that will free up a roster spot, and we expect Marcus Allen to come back in that go-around procedure move.
Yeah, and just the thing when Marcus Allen is, even if he's just and look, when they do sign him back, it's not going to be for $2.54 million, right? It might be the minimum when it comes to him, and it's because mainly what he gives you on special teams as an up back, kind of a dependable guy there overall. But Kazee, boy, he had such a great preseason, man. And Austin doesn't seem to be too concerned about how they go about maybe accomplishing some of the things that they hoped to be able to do with Kazee. I get that's the right thing to say, but Kazee sure did free Minkah Fitzpatrick up quite a bit, and I'm not convinced they're going to be able to get to that point any other way, but we'll see.
Right. They were using that 3 safety package, I believe, for 7 snaps over the last 2 games before he got hurt. It was not going to be a big bulk of what they did defensively, but it was going to be a different wrinkle they would have against, heavy tight end personnel and things like that. So disappointing there. Yeah, with Marcus Allen, we talked about that, I think, during Monday's or Friday's show. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. While he does have to go through waivers, no one's claiming a 26-year-old backup linebacker for $2.5 million that's been hurt all summer. And so he should be able to pass through and then come back to this team for probably half the cost. So that one always made sense. I mean, typically the go-around guys, as you pointed out, are more vested players on cheaper contracts. But just given the circumstances, it actually is pretty beneficial for the Steelers to release Allen and then bring him back.
I would agree. And plus, you didn't of the vested guys anyway that you're willing to circle back. There weren't many of them,
right,
to choose from. So we'll see whether or not Scott's one of them. But you'd be foolish to claim that claim Marcus Allen off of waivers, I think.
Now, the question is, would this team add another safety at some point? They'd have 4 with Fitzpatrick, Edmonds, Norwood, and Killebrew, who's had a bumpy summer, basically did not play and barely practice all summer. It appears he seems to be a bit healthier right now, but he's kind of been up and down and just trying to find consistent footing with that pec injury. So you do wonder if they'll look to add a safety or just essentially roll with Fitzpatrick, Edmonds, and Trey Norwood. I
think what you'll see is they're hoping Elijah Riley clears waivers and he'll land on the practice squad. And I think you'll see Riley, one
of the call-ups.
One of these elevation guys. I think they might have a little something with him as far as versatility. In other words, it's a nice kind of 54 player, if you will.
Right, because what the rule is, you can now elevate a player 3 times this year before you have to sign them to your active roster, correct? Or your 53-man roster. So I think there's kind of some yo-yos. For example, I believe the Packers only kept 2 running backs, and the theory is they're just going to have a 3rd running back on the practice squad and just elevate him the first 3 weeks and just kind of stretch that out as long as they possibly can.
Right, and you never know how injuries are going to go, and maybe you need at some point, at least until Kazee gets back, right? So that's at least what I think they should do, is hope that Riley gets through waivers and then put Riley on the practice squad.
Right, but again, what we assume will happen today is Kazee to IR, Marcus Allen coming back, so that would essentially give you 5 inside linebackers and 4 safeties, and where it goes from there, we'll have to wait and see.
And let's not forget that Allen has played safety in his past, so there's some break glass in case for emergency there, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think those days are probably done, but I understand what you're saying there. With the specialists, pretty chalk, actually extremely chalk. Chris Boswell, Presley Harvin, and Christian Kuntz, so 0 surprises there.
All right, single biggest surprise of cut down day was?
Did the trades count as surprises?
No.
Okay. Then in terms of guys,
because look, that was my terrible take yesterday. This team is right on brand when it comes to that, right? Because we talk every year around OTA times that, boy, you get past OTAs and this team usually ends up having 2 to 3 players that weren't even on the team at OTAs wind up on the 53-man roster. And lo and behold, they had 3 this year: Larry Ogunjobi, Malik Reed, and obviously Jesse Davis. So they were right on brand. It's next to impossible to predict who they're going to trade for, right?
Sure. But we knew O-line help, edge help, like those were areas they're going to address.
Absolutely. So outside of that, biggest single surprise of cut down day,
Joe Haeg. And I wasn't,
absolutely.
I mean, I thought there was a chance. I've been kind of mentioning a little bit. It's been a weird summer for him, losing some reps to Trent Scott. He dealt with a concussion, though he came back in practice yesterday, so he was medically cleared. So I thought there was a chance, but there weren't any major surprises yesterday. Sometimes there were some that really came out of left field that really surprised you. I didn't feel like that happened in Pittsburgh. The trades were the most notable aspect of the day, but the name that caught my attention the most was Joe Haeg.
At least from where I'm sitting, I mean, I know people on Twitter, I can't believe McFarland over, what wasn't kept over Snell or Lane. Nah, man, you read Alex's training camp reports alone and never watch a preseason game. You knew what was coming there, I think. But you add the preseason in there on top of it. No way was Lane a surprise. No way was McFarland a surprise. I'm with you. I think the cutting of Joe Haeg was the single biggest surprise of cut down day.
Yeah, and at the risk of tooting our own horn, I guess I
do it
though. I mean, you only missed 3, and the trades impacted that. I only missed 2. I think it's my best ever roster prediction. I knew they were only going to carry the top 3 internal edge guys and Juan Highsmith Tuska. They were going to go outside for somebody else. I talked about the IR to return guys. Marcus Allen was one of my cuts. I think Allen was kind of your theoretical return guy as well. And so again, I was personally less surprised by it because I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what direction this roster was headed.
We gave the people what they paid for, Alex.
Right, which is about the same as what the Steelers paid for Jesse Davis.
Right.
Nothing. But I think ours might work out a bit better.
All right. And I think, once again, slightly better roster overall. But, once again, I think Reed gives you a slight upgraded outside linebacker. And if Davis is used as a guard, and we'll see how this thing cycles through here before week 1, slightly better depth on the offensive line, and specifically if it's at guard with him.
Right. And just last note, some of the new additions, the roster turnover, more to come today. You have a new GM in Omar Khan, new assistant GM in Andy Weidel. Those guys did not go through the typical offseason process, no bulk of free agent, no draft. And so you're going to see this is the first time they could really start to construct and shape the roster in their vision. And so you may see more change there. You saw 2 trades, which is relatively uncommon for Pittsburgh to make 2 of them at cutdown time, because you have some new people involved really getting their hands on the roster for the first time.
Right. And let's see, a tight end in for a visit who probably has a good chance of landing on a practice squad, right?
Right. That is Dalton Keene, former 3rd-round pick. And so new GM, but old pedigree habits die pretty hard in Pittsburgh. He's kind of a blocker type, dealt with some knee injuries. He's probably a practice squad candidate.
All right. Anything else?
Well, speaking of practice squad, we should probably wrap this episode up pretty quickly because the waiver claims will process at noon. Practice squad names will start to get floated out after that. The Trib is reporting Delonte Scott has his name in the locker room with a new number, and so that probably means Delonte Scott is getting signed to the Steelers practice squad. 16-man practice squad for each team this year. I imagine there'll be several outsiders brought in. Dalton Keene could be one of those names, and so we'll have to see how the rest of the roster looks in terms of any waiver additions, obviously the KZ move, and the formation of this team's practice squad.
Right. And we expect a good number of these practice squad guys to be guys that were cut, but there'll probably be, 3, 4, maybe even 5 outsiders when it comes to this, but we should have all that established by obviously later today, and then any moves that cycle through. Let's see, today's you would think possibly by Friday all the manipulation would be done, right?
I think so. Generally speaking, yes. I think you might see 5 or 6 outside guys signed to the practice squad. I think the depth here was kind of poor. There were some injuries, and again, just with Khan and Weidl running the show for the first time, I could really see a lot of new faces. Remember the Matt Filer year? They brought in like 5 or 6 different guys that year. It was Grimble and Filer and some other names like I've forgotten about. I think you're going to see something similar today.
All right, some quick emails here. Anthony Renzelli writes in, James Daniels. He says, loyal listener and commenter, first-time emailer. Can you do a breakdown, a quick analysis of James Daniels in Game 3? You have one of those coming, don't you?
Yes, I'm going to do a video on that. I don't know exactly when. It's been so crazy. Daniels was better. This offensive line truly was better. There's improvement to be had, but I thought Daniels in particular probably made the biggest jump from last week's disaster against Jacksonville to the finale against Detroit. Daniels really looked better.
Okay, Jesse Hernandez, podcast question. Hey, guys, Jesse from West Palm. Best podcast ever. I refresh the Twitter feed every 5 minutes when it's supposed to drop. Anyways, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm curious as to how you guys really feel about Pickett. He says if the Giants offered their 2023 first round pick and their 2023 third round pick for Pickett, would you both as a GM make the trade? He says, I'm absolutely am so intrigued with Pickett, and I wish I could see a couple of regular season games from him, but truthfully, I see a souped up Garoppolo floor and basically as his ceiling. He says, Mitch, I see a higher ceiling for sure, but Kenny seems so much more consistent. Curious as your thoughts. Jesse, here's my thoughts. A, no, I would not trade Pickett away right now for a first and a third. Second, look, I didn't get the luxury to see Pickett during the start of training camp till obviously till now. I saw the preseason, every snap of preseason, obviously. Maybe Alex can speak to this a little bit more. But I will tell you from what I observed in just 3 preseason games is I saw very nice progression, incremental progression with Pickett in those 3 games at this point. So, when you get a quarterback, especially one early in the draft, how great is it that if you watch preseason alone, you get to see the incremental progress that this kid had, and as poised as he was and everything. That alone gives you some level, we obviously will be able to, once he gets in the regular, you're not going to know who this kid is until 24 starts in the NFL, I don't think. I mean, you'll get a lot better idea a good 8, 9, 10 in, but you don't really know until you get into past a full season worth of starts, and then the team starts game planning around what they've seen in those first 15, 18 starts or whatever there. But no, I would not trade him for what you just said for 2023. And Alex, you talk more about his progression from the start of camp through all of preseason.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it pretty short because obviously that's a crazy Madden hypothetical that isn't going to happen, and I'd have no interest in doing that right now. But the progression was pretty clear. It was a tough first week. He faced that adversity, settling in, but then they really took off from there. But again, there was overall progression. But inside stadiums, he was consistently the same dude every single game. As I mentioned last week, anyone could have a good performance in one game. You're in the NFL, you're in that top 1% of talent. Anyone's capable of having one good game, but can you stack good games? Can you build on things? Pickett did. So that was almost the most impressive thing to me. The progression, of course, but doing that at that same level game after game, all 3 games, and to have that level of consistency, that trust, that steadiness for a rookie is pretty impressive.
I agree. Simon Short writes in, Jesse Davis versus Joe Haeg in special teams. He says, hey, guys, thanks for all your work yesterday. 2 quick questions. Do you think Jesse Davis is an upgrade over Joe Haeg, or was the Hague release just roster manipulation? Also, how significant is it for special teams units that Ulysses Gilbert III, Marcus Allen, and Justin Lane all will not be part of this team this season unless Allen circles back, of course, he says. Look, you got Hayward, Connor Hayward taking one of those spots. You got Mark Robinson. You got Jaylen Warren going to play. I'm not worried about the special teams aspect of losing Gilbert and guys like Justin Lane. I mean, you got Boykin now at the other gunner and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's not even worried worth talking about there, Simon. Jesse Davis an upgrade over Joe Hague. Simon, you just heard us talking. Joe Hague was a tackle that could play guard. I think Jesse Davis is a guard that can play tackle. I wouldn't expect Hague to come back because it didn't make sense to make him a roundabout guy if that ends up unless you just want to try to get him back at a cheaper salary. But why couldn't you have just gone to him and say, look, we're going to release you unless you just take a salary cut, and even then you're not talking about a great salary cut in that. So Alex, you want to add any of that?
I mean, again, you watch Davis more than I have, and Josh Carney just posted a film room on Jesse Davis, so check that out on Steelers Depot. But I think I would have preferred 1-to-1. I'd rather keep Hague than acquire Davis. And again, the question is just who is his third string tackle? And is it going to be Trent Scott or somebody new? And so your starter tackles have question marks, at least Dan Moore, and now you really have currently nothing at backup tackle, which is a big concern.
Dan from Chicago wants to know about why is it that we don't see centers? We get this question probably twice a year. Why don't we see centers who can take over long snapping duties that's freeing up roster spot for teams to deepen their bench areas, blah, blah, blah. And then he's got more on this and all like that. Wants to know. Look, it's become more of a specialized position. Bill Belichick, there's an interview, and I know people hate Bill Belichick, but somewhere on Twitter or YouTube is Bill Belichick talking about the evolution of moving from centers to long snappers. And if you get Bill Belichick talking football, it's fantastic. And that's one of those interviews there. It's just become a more kind of real specialized position with the time that it takes for that football to get back there. Centers don't have really a lot of time to work on. I mean, yeah, ideally, and plus you're risking him for putting him on that field goal team, the way they kind of cheat these long snappers of getting your center hurt and everything that goes along with that. So maybe I'll look for it too, Daniel, maybe if I can find it, but there's a great video out there about Belichick talking about, the evolution of centers moving away from long snappers.
Yeah, it used to be that centers were long snappers. Mike Webster was his team's long snapper for quite some time. I remember whenever in Tunshokin's book, whenever he got drafted by Pittsburgh, Chuck Noll told him at some point that, Mike Webster's getting old. He can't run down kicks and punts anymore. So we need someone who can long snap. I don't think Tunch ever really became that, but it was Steve DiHossi was kind of one of the first true long snappers. That's the guy that Belichick's talking about. And his son, Zach, played in the NFL for quite some time as a long snapper as well. For Pittsburgh, their first official long snapper was Kendall Gammon back in 92. And it's evolved from there, from Mike Schneck to Greg Warren to now Christian Kuntz. And so there's always that specialization of it. And so I understand the idea behind it, but you want your long snapper to be perfect. You don't want him to be missing 1 out of 10, because it is so precious and that can change a game so much. So I understand the point, but the game has become so specialized in so many different ways, and long snappers are part of that.
All right, one final one, and that'll put us at an hour and 15 minutes to get out of here. Nicholas Gooden says, hey, guys, would you agree that Mason Rudolph will only get more valuable as the season begins and other teams become more desperate for potential quarterback solutions? He says maybe that's why Omar is in no rush to trade him before the season starts. I mean, I guess it all depends on how injuries go. Personally, if Omar could have got a 4th by now, I think Omar would have dealt Mason. Who knows? Maybe he's struggling even to get a 5th at this point. Maybe he wants a 5th and a 7th. I don't know. I don't think Mason Rudolph's trade value has ever been higher than it's been right here at this moment. The question becomes, I guess, from Nicholas is, can it get higher than it is now as the season progresses? And I guess the answer to that, it really depends on injuries.
Yeah, it just takes one team. But my thought was if he was going to get dealt, it was most likely going to be yesterday. Could it still happen? Sure, that's possible. But I think Pittsburgh, again, has always been content keeping Rudolph and holding on to their quarterback depth, and really would have to be blown away by an offer they could not refuse. A Martavis Bryant type deal where some team just keeps up in the ante and asking for more or offering more and more and more to the point where you sit there and say, we'd be dumb to turn this down. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Rudolph ultimately stays in Pittsburgh.
Alex Leatherwood, real quick. Would you at least put in a claim on him, or is the guaranteed contract enough to scare you away from him?
I imagine the contract's prohibitive because if it was not that much of an issue, some team would have traded a 7th round pick for him just to ensure they would get him, as opposed to not fighting in the waiver claim order. So I would not be surprised if he went unclaimed. Now from there, I think he gets signed pretty quickly. Pittsburgh, Jeremy Fowler made a reference to he thinks Pittsburgh would be interested. It was a pretty vague report, quote unquote. Pittsburgh obviously loves their pedigree, and I think they had some interest in him coming out of Alabama. But it seems like he's such a mess technically. And again, isn't he more of a guard right now? Inside.
That's the way I kind of thought. So if he's the guard, that means Davis is the tackle.
Yeah, or they're just like, it's the old breakfast cereal. Oops, all guards. Like that's the whole roster for this team right now. Like you got to have a tackle in there somewhere, Omar Khan. So maybe, I mean, I get the connection there, but again, it goes to the question of exactly who's going to play tackle.
I mean, the guy's been a mess right now, and it certainly doesn't look like he's going to be a tackle, right?
Right. And he's not ready to play like at all. He needs to sit for a season and just not be rushed into action. That's got to be the approach with Alex Leatherwood.
Right. So, well, one way you're guaranteed to get him is to claim him off waivers, but you better have patience to eat a little bit of guaranteed money there.
Right. And again, if teams were comfortable with taking on that contract, somebody would have traded for him, right? I mean, the Raiders were shopping him, obviously.
You would think, and other than releasing him, even if you could get a 7th for him to take the contract off your hands, you would have done that. And the fact that no team was willing to do that in a offensive line starved league, that probably tells you a lot right there.
Right. So we'll see. We'll get our answer pretty soon. Waiver claims will be processed as of this recording in 27 minutes. And by the time this is publicly aired, it'll already have passed. So we may get our answers by then.
All right. Good job, Alex. I think we knocked it out of the park this year when it comes to discerning what the 53-man roster would look like and evaluating the team. And we'll see what the roster manipulation looks like when we get back together again on Friday. What's your terrible take about today?
It's about Jaylen Warren. Hopefully he's not cut because it's already done, but I assume Jaylen Warren's going to make this team. And just I love the underdogs, the guys that make that improbable path. That's a guy that grew up in North Carolina, played his high school football in Salt Lake City, 2-star recruit, played at Snow College where Brett Kiesel also played at Snow College, and then goes Utah State, Oklahoma State, undrafted, NFL makes a team. I love that story. Love it for Jaylen Warren.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button upper right, navigation bar. If you want to make a donation, hit the donate button up there. That way, we got a lot of content coming up. We got film rooms already up on Malik Reed and Jesse Davis, and I think one just hit on Mark Robinson. The Depot crew just blowing it out of the park right now. So proud of everything that they've done this offseason here, and there's just going to be a lot of content coming for everybody through the weekend as we start getting shifting direction from roster construction to week 1 game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So once again, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.